Good morning, everyone. Shavua Tov, Ketvach. We are in Mishna Bikurim. We are in Perek Beis, Chapter 2, Mishna Vav, Mishna 6. Now, a quick introduction to this Mishnah, and that is that for certain laws, for certain halachas, it's important to know regarding produce, what year is it from? Now, what year is it from means that we know that there is a 7-year Shemitah cycle. Meaning the seventh year is Shemitah. And then you have the 6 years before. Now, in each one of those 6 years before that precedes Shemitah, you have to give from your produce Truma to the Kohen, and Ma'aser Rishon, the first tithing after that, goes to the Levi. That's what you have to do every year of those 6 years. On the third, and now on the first and second, and the fourth and fifth, there is a second tithing that has to be done after you give the Ma'aser to the Levi. There's a second tithing you have to do, and that's called Ma'aser Sheni, as we mentioned many times before. And Ma'aser Sheni has to be taken to Yerushalayim to be eaten, or you redeem it onto money that has to be spent in Yerushalayim. On year 3 and 6, instead of the second tithing being the Ma'aser Sheni that's sanctified, has to go to Yerushalayim, we give what's called Ma'aser Ani, the 10th that goes to the poor. So the second tithing, we call it Ma'aser Ani, because instead of keeping it for yourself and eating it and having to eat Yerushalayim, you give it to the poor. That's what happens on the third and the 6th year. So therefore, if you have something growing, you want to know what year it belongs to. Is it, let's say, a second year? Is it from the second year, and therefore you need to give Ma'aser Sheni from that produce? Or is it the third year, or does it belong to the third year, and you have to give Ma'aser Ani? What is the determining factor about what year it belongs to? So it really depends what we're talking about. If we're talking about fruit, then it follows what's called chanata. Chanata is a stage when the blossom falls off and the fruit begins to emerge in its place. That's chanata. It's an early stage. It's not fully grown. It's an early stage of growth. But every year that growth takes place regarding fruit, that determines the year it belongs to. When it comes to vegetables go batzar lekita. That means when they're picked. They belong to the year that they're picked in. And therefore, so you can imagine something that blossomed the second year but got picked in the third year. So again, if it's a fruit, then it's going to follow the year that it blossomed, or when the blossoms fall off, rather, chanata. And if it's a vegetable, then you're going to follow the year that it's picked. Our mission is to discuss an esrog. An esrog is a fruit, right? Well, in some ways, it's like a vegetable. And the reason in some ways it's like a vegetable is because, and this is an interesting determining factor, unlike other trees, the esrog tree cannot survive on rainwater alone, but requires water from other sources. In this sense, the esrog is like vegetables, which also require additional water. A fruit grows on a tree, but another difference between a fruit and a vegetable is that a fruit can survive just on rainwater. Vegetables need other sources than just rain. And the esrog grows on a tree, but its nature is that it needs more than just rain. And therefore, in some ways, it's like a tree, in some ways, it's like a vegetable. And that's the point that our Mishnah is going to make right now. Esrog shava le'ilan b'shleisha derachim u'liyarek b'derech echad. An esrog is like a tree in 3 ways, and like a vegetable in 1 way. Shava le'ilan ba'arl b'ravai b'shvius. It's similar to a tree. It's considered a tree regarding the laws of Arla, the laws of Ravai, and the laws of Shemitah. What that means is that if let's say you have an esrog tree, so we know the first 3 years, the fruits of those first 3 years are forbidden because they're Arla. Now, how do you count those years? Do you count the years by when it's picked, or by when it is? Or by chanata, when it blossomed, we'll just call it. Well, that's not the right word to use. What's the word that they use for chanata? We'll just refer to it as chanata. If it's a fruit tree, if it's a fruit tree and you're following chanata, then it's 3 years starting from that first chanata. If you will be following when it's picked, then it's going to follow with the year it's picked. So chanata comes earlier than lakita. Chanata comes earlier than being picked. So you could have, let's say, it's 3 years. The tree has gone through 3 years since it first had chanata, but maybe because the picking took place the year after, if you would follow picking, then what we call the fourth year would be the third year for Arla. So there's a big difference as to whether we consider it, whether we consider it a fruit and we follow the chanata, or it's considered a vegetable and we follow when it's picked. The end and the Mishnah telling us when it comes to the laws of Arla, we consider it a tree, and the 3 years are the 3 years of chanata. Now, then the Mishnah says Ravai. Ravai is the fourth year. The first 3 years, the fruits are forbidden. The fourth year, the fruits are sanctified, similar to Meiser Sheni, and they need to be eaten in Yerushalayim or redeemed onto money. The money goes to Yerushalayim. So here too, Ravai follows the same pattern. It follows. It's considered part of the year of when the chanata took place, and not when the picking took place. Well, b'shvius, and the same thing regarding Shemitah. Now, what that means is like this. If you have something growing from the ground, we know that Shemitah fruit, something that's considered growing in the year of Shemitah, has special sanctity. You can't ruin it. You can't do business with it. There's a special sanctity to it. And so now the question is, let's say you had something that blossomed in the 6th year, but it would be picked in the 7th year. What year does it belong to? So now that we say an esrog is considered a fruit, it's considered a fruit of a tree, then we say it follows chanata. If this chanata took place in the 6th year, just because I pick in the 7th year, it's considered regular fruit. It doesn't have the sanctity of Shemitah. So these are the 3 ways that the esrog is similar to a tree, meaning to a fruit. Well, the yarek b'derech echad. In one way, it's considered a vegetable. Because to determine the maasros, to determine the tithings, there you follow when it is picked. So therefore, if you have this produce that the chanata took place in, let's say, the 2nd year, but the picking took place in the 3rd year, then this is a 3rd-year crop. And if it's a 3rd-year crop, the second tithing will not be Meiser Sheni that is sanctified in Yerushalayim, but rather you would give it to the poor. Divrei Rabbi Gamliel, these are the words of Rabbi Gamliel. Rabbi Eliezer says, Shavar le'ilam b'chol davar. A esrog is considered like a tree, like a fruit for all matters, for everything, including maasros, including the tithings. Therefore, if you want to know which year it belongs to, you're going to look at the chanata. So something that if the chanata took place in the 2nd year, but it got picked in the 3rd year, then we say that is considered a 2nd-year fruit, and the Meiser Sheni is the second tithing is Meiser Sheni that has to be eaten in Yerushalayim. Okay, so we're in Klal Tes, chapter 9 of the laws of Rechilas from the Chavetz Chaim, and we are up to Sif Yud Aleph, paragraph 11. The previous paragraph, the Chavetz Chaim was talking about where a person is about to enter a store, and the kind of customer he is. He could easily be tricked, and the whole question is about warning him and letting him know not to go in there to get hurt. We've been discussing until now, you're trying to warn him not to be cheated. So before he purchases it, you're telling him, don't go in there. But if let's say he already bought it, he tricked him. Or either for the value of this thing, of this purchase, or other defaults, then it depends on this. If let's say at this point he cannot go back to the person who cheated him, halacha has limits about when you can go back to the person. So it could be that he overcharged, but as we said, if he overcharged is less than 1/6 of the going price, then you can't demand anything from him. You can't nullify the purchase. You can ask for the money back. Or there are other situations where basically if the purchaser got cheated, doesn't show it to someone to figure out that he got cheated after a certain point of time, and then he finds out he cannot go back to the person who sold it to him. Now, so the point is, is that if now we're at this point that he purchased, he can't do anything about it. If you now tell the purchaser, look how the seller cheated you, he's clearly transgressing the prohibition of rechilas. At the end of the day, he can't do anything. So what are you doing? You're just spreading gossip. He did this to you. That's what you're doing. You're a spreader. You're a peddler. You're peddling stories. And therefore, that's what you're doing. That's rechilas. There's nothing you can do about it. What's the point? Now, again, we're talking about, you're telling him about this article itself. And you're just telling him, no, boy, you just got cheated. Now, let's say the person asks you, hey, did I get cheated here? Can't tell him the truth. There's no point. And all the more so if, let's say, you respond, you know that the seller is going to be damaged. I mean, he may have cheated, but at the same time, as we say, two wrongs don't make a right. He may, let's say, grab something from his, meaning the purchaser, the buyer will grab something from the seller, so to speak, oh, you cheated me, so he takes something from him. Or maybe, again, he didn't fully pay. He still owes money, and he's going to stop now. That's a very that makes the rechilas even more severe. Let's say you know that based on halacha, he would be right. He could go back to the purchaser and do something about it. Either he'd be able to get back, he'd be able to return what he bought, or he could at least get back the amount of money that he was overcharged. And if the person was cheated would know that he was cheated, he wouldn't just let it go. You got to come to the truth then. So that he can take back from his friend when he was cheated. But nonetheless, you still have to be careful. Meaning there's still conditions that have to be met. So again, we're starting off at the point like we have started many times before, where we start off that, it comes out that if you would tell him what went wrong, it wouldn't be rechilas because he could do something about it. So it's l'toyalas, it's for a constructive purpose. It's to help him. But like we had before, the conditions have to be met, and we will get back to that in the future. I wish you all a good Shavua Tov, a good Tvach, Chag Sameach, good Yantif. Have a wonderful and beautiful Shavuos. All the best.